Hi, how are you guys doing? This is Darcy, and this is Darcy's Misadventures with Mixed Media. Let's hope today is not too much of a misadventure. This is a little bit more of a tutorial, even though I don't really know a lot. I had to look stuff up so that I could explain it well for you guys. If you're new to jelly plating, you're like, hey, I keep hearing about this jelly plate stuff. What is a jelly plate? Well, basically a jelly plate, I'm gonna have to read this, because I don't remember things well. It's a soft, and I added squishy, reusable, durable silicone printing plate that allows you to create beautiful monotypes without a press. Now, some of you might be thinking, what's a monotype? Well, a monotype, which I put on the next page, a monoprint is a form of printmaking where the image can only be made one time. Unlike a Xerox machine, you can make a bunch of copies, but with this one, you're only going to get that one copy, that one way, one time. Every other time, it's going to be different, and you're never going to get the same print twice. And some people might wonder what they're made of. A homemade jelly plate is made of water, gelatin, and glycerin. But the ones that you buy, I don't believe they have gelatin in them. It is hard to find out what they're made of. There are two main jelly plate companies. One is Jelly Arts, and the other one is Gel Press. I don't have my label for that one anymore. I have, this is a Gel Press. Don't just ignore. Obviously, I don't clean my plates. But that might be fun getting off. Let's see. And this one is these two bigger ones. You shouldn't stack them on top of each other. You should never stack anything on top of your gel plate. I hang mine on a hook over to the side here. I'm going to actually put this one back over there. But this is a 12 by 12. You don't want to start with a big one. You need to learn how you get the paint on the plate and how much paint you need before you go big like this. My first one I got was an 8 by 10. Patricia of PM Art Studio actually recommends a 5 by 7 for your first one, which you could do a lot with a 5 by 7. So yeah, but when I'm using a 12 by 12 and I want a smaller one, I just put some washi tape or some packing tape, although packing tape can leave a residue if it's on there for too long, or masking tape. Like if I want a 9 by 12, I just mark off 3 inches and then I have a 9 by 12 plate, and I don't have to go buy, and I still have my 12 by 12 for when I want to do stuff on a 12 by 12 paper. This one's an 8 by 10. This one is Gel Press. So I just kind of, and obviously I don't clean my plates. They do recommend that you clean your plates. And also when I got the instructions when it came, said to get rid of the plastic. That's why I don't have the plastic in here. And now I'm like, kind of wish I did, but some people just put them on acrylic and store them up on a shelf. And the thing is, if you store them with paper on them, the paper is going to absorb the oils and your plate will dry out more quickly. So the Jelly Art one, they're both, I think they both claim to be 3/8 inches. This one, the Jelly Arts, might be the slightly, like a millimeter smaller or something. It's not that much different. And feel-wise, they feel pretty similar. This one's dusty now. I gotta get the dust off of it. It's been sitting over there. And then someone set a flashlight on it, but I think it's alright. And I use both sides. And I usually do, and this one got scratched. So what can you use on your plate? They recommend acrylic paints. I use pretty much anything. I recommend, if you're going to use whatever, just nothing that's going to scratch or melt your plate, basically. Because I've used alcohol inks, and but by the time I'm done using alcohol inks, they're usually, well done off the plate, so they won't dry. They're the first thing I use, and then I use a bunch of stuff after that. Now, some things will stain your plate. I don't know if you can see the design in there, but I have some really dark, paint pastels. And those do stain my plate. So, and inks can stain your plate as well. So yeah, mine's pretty. It comes a lot clearer than this. Mine's well used. Although the gel press ones are on sale right now. So yeah, this side is scratched. So did I scratch both sides? No, just the one side. So I would probably just use this side now. Don't scratch your plate. I can't even remember what I did, but it was something. And next thing I knew, I had little scratch marks in there. I'm not sure what to do. If I can use a little bit of heat to get them out or what. I also have divots in there too. But I'm not looking for perfect prints, so it doesn't bother me that much. Let's see. I want to make sure I get everything. So, the jelly arts say they're easy to clean. You can use them over and over again. Store at room temperature. And I guess they were made of a thermoplastic elastomer. Don't know what that means. The gel press, it just says 3/8 inch thick gel plate made by the manufacturers of original gel formula for a superior gel plate. Easy cleanup, soap and water, baby wipes, or hand sanitizer. Pat dry with a lint-free cloth. Periodically condition with a drop of baby oil to keep plate in top condition. So I guess you don't need a lot of baby oil or mineral oil. Like I have some Gamsol, which is mineral oil, which has no odor. So I would just use a drop of that. But you do want to make sure it's clean before you condition it. Yeah, and then talk about their sizes and whatnot. So yeah, you can use pretty much anything. Whoops, I shouldn't be setting stuff on top of that. I just said that, right? And let's see. Oh, one question that so a couple things we're going to cover today. One is, what do you do if you get too much paint? How do you know if you don't have enough paint, sort of? And layering, like figuring out, trying to learn which is the bottom layer, which is the top layer kind of deal. So I'm going to start, I think I'm going to just clean up these, yeah, my desk's still a mess from yesterday. I'm going to try to clean these up. Now, when you have paint that's been on here for a while that's dry, you need a very thin layer of paint, is what I've been told. This is all just stuff I've learned from other people. I have no magical knowledge other than what I've learned from doing stuff and what I've learned from other people. What type of papers can you use? Pretty much anything, although I think one of the companies does not recommend glossy paper. People have found that glossy cardstock gets stuck. So you don't want to use a paper that has a glossy finish. And there are some thinner papers that are going to possibly tear when you try to take them off the plate. Let me see. I just used. I don't want the acrylic. I'm just looking for a paint to lift this off. Just a paint. I got some white here. White should work. Just trying to get it cleaned off. And the brayers, I have different brayers. I have, this one's a Tim Holtz one. One of these is a Jelly Arts one. This one's a soft one. So it's just a little more squishy. This one's a hard one. The Tim Holtz one is somewhere in between. This one's a hard one. That one's a hard one. And this one's also it's like hard rubber. So you don't want anything that's like metal or plastic. You want more like a rubber that's at least got some gifts. I got a new one. Look, isn't it pretty? It's so big. It'll actually just about go across. So, very excited about that. Nathan?
Yeah, man.
My son needs to get a correction and turn off his alarm. Hopefully he will do that soon. Otherwise, I'm going to have to pause and we'll deal with it. You know what I'm saying? I can't just do it for him. He's 21. He's got to do this stuff. All right, I got these got to be pretty close to peeling. I'm not sure how Patricia does it. Patricia, PM Artist Studio. You want to learn about Geliplate printing? Definitely go watch her. Okay, now I was going to show you guys this, but I forgot. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make, and I even forget, and I sometimes do it too, is they put the paint down, right? And then they just go like this. Well, you're not going to cover the brayer like that. You're not going to get to the other side of the brayer you're just not going to cover the brayer. So what you need to do is go several times in one direction and then go a few times in the other direction, or several, whatever. And make sure your brayer is completely covered. Like I did the first time. See, and then I've got too much paint on this little one, so I can just take it off of there and put it over here. But I was using it for a palette, which is kind of why I have too much over there. Alright, I want a thin layer to pick this up, but I also want to make sure that all these pieces on the edge get wet. You need that top wet layer to get stick to the dry layer. Alright, sometimes it's almost impossible because you need a thin layer of paint and your little bits are like thick. It's kind of hard to do. Oh, I got lots of this. I'm going to use this pattern paper. It may rip, but a thinner paper tends to grab the paint a little bit better. Like deli paper is great for taking off this type of layers. Do you think I can easily find my deli paper right now? That's correct, I cannot. So I'm trying to find something that might be similar. And also when you're using a stencil and taking off the bits inside a stencil, the thinner the paper, the better. The thinner the paper, the better. I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. This is just the other part of the pattern. Now, you will see that if you watch Patricia, she lets things, well, with thin paper like this, you don't want to leave it on for too long because it will stick to the plate and rip. But look at that gold paint has been sitting there for well over a month. And I just put that layer of white paint on and was able to lift most of it off. There's still some on there, which is really not surprising, but I'll do another layer and see. And then now I have this, which I can use in collage and whatnot, which will be fun. Let me rip that off real quick. Just use my ruler, which then I'll toss and not be able to find. Oh, Tracy Fox asked a question on Sunday in her group. What's something you're always losing? My answer to that was whatever I just had in my hand. Whatever I just had that I just threw, because that's what I do. I throw stuff. I just toss it off to the side, willy-nilly, helter-skelter, pell-mell, not paying much attention at all. Now, I guess I'm going to get some of this off, but these edge bits, they're just too thick. And I had a thin enough layer that you could still see the background here, which is kind of cool. Alright, let's try this again using the this other paper, and then after that I'll try also I'm going to try, oh, I haven't opened this one yet. Fluid acrylics I like to use in gel plate printing. Yes, they do cost more, but they give you some really, really great effects. And this one is a new one, iridescence bronze. And my other new one is somewhere. It dries pretty quickly though, so you have to get your stuff on there if you're using it for your top layer, which often you will. My light is not great today, so I do apologize for that. And I will probably have to go yell at Nathan. I mean, he's 21. He should be able to take care of his own sugars, right? Shouldn't he? Should I have to be the one to tell him to? No, I shouldn't. As he should have already had a correction before that alarm went off, but he's just not good at paying attention. Oh, okay. Now some of you have seen people use like this round wood thing. And some people like me just kind of use their brayer or their hands. The thing that somebody might use to go like this on their jelly plate to do this is a Baron, B-A-R-E-N, or a printmaking Baron. They can be costly, If you don't do a lot of Geliplate printing, you don't really need it. A reason to get it, I mean, costly like $20 to $30 for just that little piece. I still want to try, I have an insulator somewhere I want to try and see if that works. I haven't done that yet. But the reason somebody might want to use that is because paper can be very drying to your hands. And so if you do a lot of gel printing, you'll want something so your paper's not having to rub on the paper a lot. So your hands aren't having to rub on the paper a lot. So I got a little bit more off the edges, but not a lot. And I didn't mean to do this backwards, but oh well. Like my paper is backwards. So, but that I guess wouldn't matter if I'm using it in collage. This is all blank on the other side anyway. Alright, this is going to be cool. All that wrinkling happened from the paper. So I know that I should go ahead and use packing tape and get my edges, but I really want what's in the middle there. Ooh, I kind of want to use black. Alright. Oops. And you can use cheap paints, you can use good paints, doesn't really matter. Now, my problem with this big brayer and using this as a palette is it's going to be a little bit harder. Why is that there? But you just kind of go back and forth. Covers that palette like really fast. I just need to move stuff. Stuff's in my way. I thought I'd clean up my desk, but anybody else become clutter blind? Alright, one way to know that your paint is already drying is if you're brayering and paint is coming back up, that means that you are, that means that your paint is already dry. Basically, what that means, that's not quite big enough. Well, almost. Something with this corner here. Papers that are near my desk right now. Just oh, and I'm trying to grab thinner paper, hoping that it will grab it better, but because I didn't find my deli paper, I should have found my. Now I have black paint on my fingers. Now, if you have some bigger paper, it's good because if your paper is smaller than your gel plate, then it's good to have a bigger piece to go over it to get the edges. Otherwise, those edges are going to get thicker and thicker, which is kind of what happened here, probably. This is me trying to clean my plate. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I haven't even cleaned it off yet. But really, aren't we glad that we did that? Isn't that cool? Can you see it? Probably not, because the sun is... I don't know if closing that will help or not. Ooh, that paint has a smell. This is me trying to... I don't have great lighting. I mean, I have natural lighting right this minute, but yeah, that came out really cool. So I have to remember that if I do... Was that black? Doesn't it look brown? Well, you can't tell because your lighting's not going to be like mine. It looks more brown than black to me. Alright. Ooh, I got some good stuff off of this one. Some good stuff that was there from way before. I got stuff on there I didn't even know was on there. There's like little white dots in there. I don't know what that's from. Oh, probably from the other paint. There might be little divots in there. So that got some of the green that was on the edges. Alright, where's my packing tape? Let's try some of that. See if we can get as much as possible off of here. Sorry about the noise. Sorry, not sorry. That's what packing tape does. It makes that noise. This one's really dried on here. Some people will reuse the packing tape because it comes out kind of cool, and sometimes it's just been on there so long, all you can do is just peel it off. Which it does. It will just, you just kind of grab at it. I'm just kind of pinching it. And it will come off if I pinch it off because it's dry. The jelly plates, they should dry, the prints should dry pretty quickly unless you're using too much paint. If your jelly prints are not drying quickly, you're using too much paint. Mine usually are dry by the time I set them down. So yeah, if it's really thick, you're just going to have to come through and squeeze it off, rub it off. You know, just kind of like, try not to get it up your nose when you do that though. And now when I come back with this, all those little pieces should pick right up. Let's see. I know it would be cool to get that, but it's too thick, and sometimes the thick ones, they don't feel nice on the paper anyway. So it's, you know, it's just going to get thicker and thicker if I leave that on there. It's just not going to come off. So we're going to start fresh and get new. See, doesn't want to come off even with the, I mean, a little bit came off, but. And I don't know if it's easier to do it while it's dry or to use a wipe and do it, but this isn't difficult to do it this way. Oh, some people to watch that are really good, like you've watched some of the older videos, especially when they first started teaching. Carolyn Dube, D-U-B-E. Carolyn with a C-A-R-O-L-Y-N. Carol, or is it Carol? Anyway, her last name's Dube. Look up Geliplate and D-U-B-E and you will find her. I think it's Carolyn. C-A-R-O-L-Y-N, I think. And of course, PM Artist Studio, Patricia and Mariah. Patricia was an art teacher, and she has some great Geliplate prints. And she actually like takes the time and lets them, oh, what's the word? Oh shoot, what's the word she uses? Anyway, she lets them sit before she takes off the paper. Ripen. She calls it ripening. Me, I do it a little differently anyway. I don't do the layers quite the same way she does. But by letting it ripen and stuff, she gets cleaner layers most of the time. It's never nobody gets perfect layers every time. And sometimes that's the fun of it. So I'm just taking a baby wipe and just getting the last of these bits off. I've had these, how long have I had these? Probably about a year maybe. So it probably would be a good time to condition them. I'm just not sure that you should condition them right before you're going to use them, or like at the end when you're going to let it sit and rest for a while. You can also just use a lint-free rag and some soap and water. So I've got some divots in here now from where the paint's at, especially the thicker paint. Even when I hang it up, it's still going to press on the clamshell. That's what the thing it comes in is called a clamshell. And obviously you saw how dirty my clamshells were. Trying to get all the way over the edge a little bit. So there. So we're starting with a fresh palette here with our 8x10. I wouldn't say that's lint-free. I don't know that this one's lint-free. Well, I think it's supposed to be lint-free, but it's been in my space, so it's probably no longer lint-free. This is just one of the, well, it's purple. Some of you might know what it is. Fly Lady. I'm using, well, this side has lint all over it, so I'm using the back side. And I'm not going to worry about this one right now because I don't have as much horrible, well, not horrible, you know, I don't have as much going on here, and I'm just going to use this one for my palette. So, what do we do if we get too much paint? What do we do if we get a cat hair? We just pick it out. Okay, do we want, oh, this had black on it though, so probably, I need a, something to, that's the only problem. Like, this is great, but I don't have any space to clean it off. And I think a whole, I need to clean off over here probably. But let's just use a smaller one for now. Use the Timmy one that breaks on me all the time. Well, it doesn't break. Because it comes out to clean. It just comes out of here to clean it easily. Sometimes I get a little rough with it and like these pins come out, but they go right back in. Or it comes right off the brayer. Alright, so want to get our brayer completely wet. See, look at, that's way too much. That's one way you know it's too much, is when it's just gloopy on there. But using this as a palette means that I can get as much on here as possible. And see this layer right here? This is actually still a little bit much. If I can wipe this off on something. So I would usually, if it's this thickness, just a little bit too thick, I would just brayer off the paint on from my brayer and then pick up some of the stuff that's there. There, so this is probably a good thickness. It's not going to take forever to dry. You might see a little bit through it. That's okay, because you want to see the next layer too. Now, when it comes to stencils, a lot of people do it this way. They put their paint on, and then they put their stencil on, which is fine. That's a way to do it. I don't always like to do it that way, just because then you get, if you're using a smaller a smaller stencil, you're gonna get that the edge of the stencil mark on there, and I don't always like that. And it's best to use a thinner paper to get all the way into those little crevices. If you use a brayer, you're not going to get into those crevices. The brayer is just going to go across the top. You're not going to get all the detail if you use a brayer over your stencil to lift. Okay? I think that's important to note. I've seen some people using a brayer and then they get frustrated because they're not getting the detail they wanted. Alright, I didn't do the other ones. But yeah, you see how I get this weird thing going on now because the stencil touched the paint. Now, that'll be a cool effect actually. But I'll show you how I actually like to do stencils in a minute. Now I can't use this as my palette because I put way too much paint down. Now, this is a light colored paint. If I put too dark of a paint, this might show some or it might disappear. I don't know. I have different things happening. First of all, we need to make sure it's dry. If it's shiny at all, it's not dry. Let me see. This side's still a little bit wet. I'm not worried about that side so much. It's this side. I don't see, it's still a little bit wet, I think. So a rosy beige. I want something that's going to contrast with it. Like if I do another pink, yes, it could show. If I do too dark of a blue, I don't know that it would show. I don't know if it'll show with this one either. Well, let's just see. Let's just see what will happen if we do a grape freeze. I'm going to put this on the way Patricia of PM Artist Studio puts it on. I'm going to put it on the edge here. Well, I'll put a little thicker than I'm supposed to, but that's how she does it. You see people put it all through the middle and then they end up with these weird shapes in the middle. That's why. And then she kind of goes across here and then she goes up. Like that. Now some of my, I was going to say some of my paint was still wet, but I'm pretty sure what happened was that some of this paint got over there is probably what happened. Now, that first layer we put on, which is on the bottom of the plate, is going to be our top layer on our paper. You think of it, you're going backwards. So the first thing you put on the plate, which is the bottom layer on the plate, is the top layer. So what we saw on the back is not what we're going to see on this. What we see on this, whoops, well, we can't see it because my plate's so dirty. But if you had a clean plate, you'd be able to see through and see what it is we are likely to get. So if you think of your plate upside down, that's the order it's going to be. And one of the reasons I actually like to use my brayer on here is because then I have something of interest on both sides. And this is why I'm always like, this is why this one's always breaking, because I'm always like pressing pretty hard. And if I let it sit for a minute, it helps, because I want it to lift as much as possible. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm trying to get the grunge happening. All right, you ready? So we did a light color over a dark color is what should be here. We'll see how it shows up. All right, see, sometimes the light color is, I take too much off and it doesn't show very well. Oh, there was definitely some, it's picking up all this lint from the baby white. I'm like, what is that? It's from the baby white. But my first layer was fairly thick and my second layer was very thin. So you can't see a lot because my second layer was too thin. But that's all right. It's not the end of the world. And then this is kind of cool. So all these little bits don't show up great because I didn't use enough paint. Does that make sense? So I went from too thick to too thin. But that is also why I prefer to do my stencils like this. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. That's the thing. You just have to play, and sometimes you'll get good stuff, sometimes you won't. Where's that stencil? Oh, it's right up here. Thank you. So I'm going to do that same stencil. I'm going to use the same color. I'm going to use, I don't know what I'm going to use. I don't know where all my brushes are right this second. All right, these are small, so I can use this one. I try to use an actual stencil brush. That way, and also if this is attached nicely to the plate, it shouldn't go under the plate, although here it's not wanting to do that. So I like to do this. And then also if I don't want the entire, like sometimes I might want it to look old wall. That's a term. Old wall. We like our old wall looks. That's what that, it's like kind of like the layers of paint on an old wall when you peel off the wallpaper, and like some of the wallpaper stays on, some of the paint stays on, some of the layers of paint come off. It's old wall. Or the paint starts peeling on a wall, so you start seeing the other layers of paint underneath. Now this way is a little more tedious, I know. I did this a different way this time. Oh well. If I had a bigger one, it would go faster. Why am I still holding this jar in my hand? That's a good question. All right, let me try this real quick. I don't usually do this, but I want to see if I can get it a little bit faster and have a similar effect. So we'll remember that the ones on the corner were brushed on, and the ones over here I used a palette knife on, and the ones on the bottom down here using a palette knife to get that in. Now this is only going to work if your stencil is down flat to the plate. So we'll see. Maybe I should start doing that. Well, the reason I don't is because it does go through like that sometimes, but that's all right. And so now it's going to take a little bit longer to dry. So I'm too impatient for that. So I'm just going to lift, just lightly putting this on there, really lightly, just to lift off some of the paint. I don't want to lift off all the paint because it needs to dry. If it doesn't dry and I put on a new layer, it's just going to get picked up in the new layer. We don't want that. We'll do grape freeze again. Not yet though. I have to let this dry. Seriously, it takes a while. You do not want to use your heat gun though, because it's bigger. You do not want to use your heat gun. Your blow dryer on cool may be okay. I know what Patricia does. She just sets it aside, and she's got like a lot of plates, so she just works on the next plate while that one dries. And then like when it's ready to ripen, she just goes to the next plate too. I don't have that luxury. I mean, I could do 2 plates. I could do between 2 plates, which would still give it some time to dry. But yeah, she lets it dry like really good. I'm still getting a lot of wet right there and there. All right, it's just a little shiny here and a little shiny there. Just pick up a little bit, a little shiny here and there. I'm just there. I just don't want it to mix in with other paint. If it's shiny, it's wet. It's definitely wet if it's shiny. All right, a little bit more this time, but not too much more. Okay, and I'm gonna roll like this to get my brayer covered. See, part of my problem before was probably that I lifted some up. I don't know. So now we see how this wet layer is on top of the layer that's dry. That's good. That's what we want. Now we can do this. When you're doing this, it doesn't matter if you go back and forth or not, depending, unless you're trying to get like a certain look. Okay, so I keep picking up paint from over here and putting it on the back here. Whoops. So the important thing though is if you have too much paint, you want to get some of that paint off. Oh, I was going to show another way that sometimes I get, when there's a lot of paint, how I get it off. Which I think actually Gail did in her video this morning. Gail Augustinelli, she did some jelly plate printing today. There we go. So I did a little bit better on my layer, second layer. So you see the stencil we put down first is our top layer. This layer we put down second is our bottom layer. So we just have 2 layers. Now some people do like to do their layers like one at a time. Like they might do a background layer on their paper and then do another layer that will go on top of that paper. Like for instance, let's see, what can we do? Let's do some of this. All right, it has to be in there tight if I want to use the, well, my paint's starting to dry now. That's not really working for me. Where'd my paintbrush go? Bueller. Oh, let's just get a paintbrush and see. Not a watercolor paintbrush, no. That's a watercolor paintbrush. I don't want to use my watercolor paintbrush. That's probably why, because this is probably mostly watercolor paintbrushes. Let's try this white one. Of course, if I use this one, it's going to be more lines. And it's going to be dry by the time I get this off of here because this paint's pretty much dry. Alright, let's put a little bit of this on here. Okay, let's peel it correctly. So now if I were to just take that bit and put it on here, say like this, there's my third layer. Why is that under there? You need to get out of the way, mister. It's pretty sad. If I do a video a lot of people might watch and it's like, okay, this girl's a hot mess. They're just be like, oh yeah, we're not coming back. So now that's, well, it's technically a third layer because it was a third time, but it's still part of this top layer now because it doesn't really overlap this one very much. Do I know how to change the whole color of that? If I take a fluid acrylic Well, that's closer to color. Let's. Sorry, this is just me messing around. This is phthalo green. It's pretty, somewhat transparent. This is a. Now, some people do not like to use high flow acrylics on their gel plate because they can bead up. Whoa. And sometimes they do bead up. Also, they show every little divot in here is showing right now. Alright, let me just do this real quick because I still want some of the pink to show through. We love bubble wrap. We do. Like, let's go ahead and look at that. Isn't that fun? That's fun. Okay. Yep, and now you know what it means when I say I throw stuff. And some people, they like to try to keep the backs of theirs nice and clean. A lot of times the back's going to get covered, and if it's not covered, if it's in one of my journals, well, I do grungy eclectic journals, so actually it just adds to it. Now it does make it hard to then go like this, because now you've got what paint on it, but pretty thin layer of paint and dries pretty quickly. Now, it's still a little cold in the middle, which means it's still pretty wet in the middle. That's one thing that we learned from Louisa Heinzel, that because paint is wet is cold, you know, it's going to feel more cold to your hand, that if you try to leave it on there until it stops feeling cold, you have a better chance of it being completely dry. Like once to your, you know, room temperature is still going to be a little cooler than your hand, so it still might feel not as warm as your hand. That's all right. All right, so now here's another layer. This layer we added after the fact. We can still see some of the purple showing through. We can still see some of the design showing through. This ended up being a little thicker than I wanted, so it totally made everything green. Instead of just change, well, here, the white parts under here are just a lighter green. That's kind of cool. All right, now, and okay, another thing to do if you get too much paint, that's what we're doing, right? That's where we were. Whoa, look at that. That's a lot of freaking paint. It's a freaking lot of paint. Should have just put it right on there. I want to get a lot of paint on here, only just to show you what to do if you have so much paint. It's like if it feels like your roller is just sliding on there, it's definitely too much paint. All right, now this is too much paint. One thing I would do, other than the brayering off thing that I did before, is I would just take a piece and just lay it on there, just very, very lightly. Just go around it very, very lightly, just to get off. Well, I did lightly, but a lot came off. So a lot came off. A lot more than I really thought was going to come off. So that's one way. And then what you have on your brayer is probably going to be pretty much enough. I probably left it on there too long. But now I have a good first layer. And now this one becomes a background. You could add more to it later if you wanted to. Or you can cut it up and make it to a background of a tag and add some stamping and what do we want to do? Some of this. We like bubble wrap. You don't have to cover the whole thing in bubble wrap, but we can cover the whole thing in bubble wrap if we want to. And we can not that one. Where's one that I started painting earlier? Nowhere. See, isn't that fun? We love it. Love bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is fun. Now, you don't want to use, unless you like backwards numbers and letters, you don't want to use stamps with numbers and letters on your plate. You want to wait and use those afterwards on your paper. If you have the foam ones, like I sometimes use, oh, I should have brought them over. hold on. I wasn't going to talk about this. That's why I didn't bring them over. I'll be right back. I'm just walking over to... Okay, the fact that I can walk over to is kind of big. Here they are. I had bought these... they're stickers. So they're number letter stickers. And they're kind of, they were black. They were black like that. So kind of like black foam stickers. So when you look at them this way, they're frontwards. But if I put them on here, they're going to be backwards. Which is what you want. Because if it's backwards on the plate, it's going to be frontwards on your paper. So stamps do not, a stamp that is a letter or number is not good on the plate. You can use it on the paper later. I had another stamp on here. Now, let's say I do another thin layer of something. And hopefully you guys can see this. This one's a matte. I just use whatever. I mix my regular acrylics and my matte acrylics. Because apparently I don't care. I don't care. I just want a thin layer of this because I want to do a couple layers. So if I do thin layers, it just gives me a little more interest and color to play with. And then I can take this stamp and I can stamp off in a couple places. So I'm going off the edges too. I'm not making a perfect pattern or anything. This is pretty dry there. There's not much thickness. I'm not even getting that off of there. So that is another layer. So when they're talking about layers on the plate, we did our first layer, we did bubble wrap, we did the letters, and we did another color and another stamping. And now we'll do another color. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 layers. I don't know. So now we'll do a pickup layer. What do we want for our pickup layer? I don't know. A lot of times for a pickup layer, so that the colors on top will show, I'll do white or cream. So let me just pick some of this off so I can use it for my palette again. Because that was still fairly wet. It was still pretty wet over there. I mean, Patricia's Way is good too, starting at the bottom, but I tend to go overboard on this top layer if I'm not careful. Ooh, a little metallic on the, oh yeah, let's do that real quick, sorry. I'm gonna do a thin layer of this iridescent bronze. If metallics tend to dry faster, so you don't want to use them as your top. It's not as, you can, but it's kind of better if you don't use them as your top layer. I mean, which is, yeah, your top layer, your lift layer, I should call it your lift layer. It's better to not use them as your lift layer. See, and it's starting to pick up paint. That means it's dry and I need to stop. So now, because that was like a metallic type, it dries pretty fast. And I'm going to start at the top here. There we go. This seems to be a good layer right here. The less you see through it, the better. But you don't want it to be so thick. I wish, I don't know, can you kind of see what that looks like? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to show you the thickness on a screen. But that should be a good thickness for picking up, fresh layers. Old layers, they say to do even thinner than that, but I don't know. That looked like a good thickness. We'll find out. If it's doing that like webbing thing, which this won't now because it's pretty dry, like the splotchy, I don't know what to call it, but if it's doing that, then chances are you've got it too thick. Let's just grab a couple of these here. And go ahead and, is it still wet? Yeah, somewhat. This paper is good too. This is just like the instructions from my bookshelves. So this way I can pick up all the paint off of there and not end up with like big tag shapes if I don't want them. I'll still have lines from the tags, but then I can press the tags down and get some of that other paint up. And then if I wanted to, I could cut those strips out and use them for collage, or just keep using that and just build up the layers on that. So that's interesting. So, and this is cardstock. These are cardstock, and this is cardstock. It picks up a little bit differently whether you're using thick or thin paper. And if it's thicker, you can leave it down longer. I could probably almost want to leave it down longer. Alright, so here's this one. We can see these really clearly because I pressed down pretty hard so it would go through all the layers. The bubble wrap, you can see a little bit. The letters we can see now they're frontwards. And yeah, I think that one came out really well. So I'm hoping I explained some stuff. Now what I would love for you to do, if you have more questions, put them in the comments below and I will do my best to help you with them. Or if I did not explain something clearly, like how the layers work on the plate, let me know and I'll try again in a different or the same way but slower. I don't know. So yeah, let's see. How long have we been going? Do I have time to play a little bit longer, or maybe I'll do a separate? Oh no, we can be done now. That's a long enough video. So we didn't get a lot printed today, but I'm hoping that you learned something. I'm hoping you at least learned what a Geliplate is and what a monoprint is, and all that. So, and that kind of came out kind of cool. So I hope you all have a delightful day. Please put in the comments if you have any more questions. I would love to hear if this was helpful. I'm calling it a tutorial, but really it's a tutorial or how I do things or just what I know, which is not everything. So have a delightful day, everybody. Love you.